Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. France's former president has one of his old jobs back. Conservative Nicolas Sarkozy handily winning the vote to lead the UMP party, setting him on the road to 2017's presidential election. Not so fast, though. First, he has to unite a party bitterly torn apart after his 2012 defeat to socialist François Hollande. Then he'll have to win first ever primaries inside his party. Sarkozy's hard-right anti-immigrant message playing well with rank and file, 55% of whom favor alliances with the far-right National Front in next year's French regional elections. But that's the primaries, and while the National Front celebrated historic inroads at its party conference this weekend, polls suggest it has no chance in a general election. Little wonder if moderate former Prime Minister Alain Juppé is enjoying a revival. The mayor of Bordeaux did not run for the UMP leadership, but he is taking on Sarkozy in the party primaries for president. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Sarkozy, the return. With us, he works in Parliament and at Paris City Hall as a UMP staffer, speechwriter as well. Bruno Bernard, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks as well to pollster Raphaël Leclerc, co-founder of Délit d'Opinion. How do you translate that?
It's pretty hard to translate, but let's say it's a think tank based and specialized on public opinion and polls.
Okay, and we'll be asking you about those polls. As we were saying, Sarkozy getting 64% of the vote. That's nearly two-thirds. A solid knockout, but not quite a plebiscite. William Hildebrand has the story.
It was a highly anticipated interview, the first since Nicolas Sarkozy was elected leader of the UMP, a victory he secured with nearly two-thirds of the vote Saturday. So decisive, it raised a prospect which many had long been suspecting was the case. Does a former French president plan on making a return to the Élysée in 2017?
At any rate, this is a new beginning. The question is asked, but I don't have any intention in answering it. Why? Because as far as I know, there's no presidential election in 2014, 2015 or 2016.
Though he sidestepped the question, he did not hesitate to take jabs at two of his biggest rivals. In 2012, he beat leader of the Front National, Marine Le Pen, in the first round before losing to socialist François Hollande, the current French president, in round two.
I do not want that my country be led down a road to a desperate situation where the only choice is between today's humiliation with François Hollande or tomorrow's humiliation with Marine Le Pen.
The past few years have been a divisive time for the UMP. That Nicolas Sarkozy wants to bring the party together again. He will have his work cut out for him. Despite winning the party leadership and widely being expected to stand for the party in the 2017 presidential elections, polls Sunday showed that 40% of French people think Sarkozy's former foreign minister, Alain Juppé, would be a better candidate. Juppé's already made it clear he plans to win the UMP nomination in the party primaries in 2016.
Bruno Bernard, that score of 64%, in politics, that's a pretty good score. But what do you think? Is that a high score or a low score?
It's a good score. It's a good score, but slightly disappointing for someone like Nicolas Sarkozy, who 10 years ago won by a landslide of 85% the internal UMP election. So to be fair to him, it's a good score. I mean, he's elected, but we had one election, one victor, Nicolas Sarkozy, and another one, a second winner, Bruno Le Maire, with 30%.
You voted, you were saying, for Bruno Le Maire.
I did,
yes. In the primaries. He got 30%, relative unknown in French politics.
Completely unknown.
He's been a government minister. He's been, chief of staff for
Dominique de Villepin.
For the former prime minister, Dominique de Villepin. How do you see the battle lines within the party at this point?
Well, the question is whether Nicolas Sarkozy is able to unite the party or is able to make people from very different backgrounds work together, such as François Fillon, Alain Juppé, Bruno Le Maire. There's no great divides, ideological divides between Fillon, Juppé, Le Maire and Sarkozy. They're all pro-European, pro-business. It's just about now a question of credibility. Can Nicolas Sarkozy retake that credibility?
You say no great divides, but you heard that the statement he made there on French television on the rampart against the National Front and against the Socialists. I more than others.
Yeah, of course. Well, it wasn't true in 2012 because he lost to a socialist candidate, François Hollande, and Marine Le Pen did very well, coming third in 2012, again after 5 years of Nicolas Sarkozy in the presidency.
So he's not the only game in town.
No, he's not.
It comes inside of the UMP party.
No, he's not anymore. He used to be. He's not anymore.
Raphaël Leclerc, your thoughts on all of this? We're hearing a member of the UMP party telling us, well, he won last night, but he's not necessarily going to win my party's primaries.
Well, what is clear is yesterday taught us something pretty new for the UMPs. For the first time in 10 years, Nicolas Sarkozy will have to face a true position inside the party and a true position inside his political family. So he has now Bruno Le Maire. He's going to work with him and try to work with him. He's going to try to deal with François Fillon and Alain Juppé. And I think when we look yesterday at the first reactions, it's something very specific. Normally, when you have a result, an outcome of an election, you have 24 hours celebration, say, well, great job, this is the great victory for the party. Yesterday, after 10 minutes, you had tweets from François Fillon. And
Former Prime Minister is running against him.
Yeah, and people say, well, congratulations, but it's not going to be an easy task for you. So now you have 2 years to show us that you're going to be the best candidate.
I was going to say, playing devil's advocate here, okay, 64% is perhaps not as high as what he wanted, but after a while, it's an election, it's passed, and he's the party leader, and you need that machine to win a presidential election.
Yeah, one should not reduce the importance of having the party, especially on a right-wing party. When you have it, you have the organization, you have the possibility to nominate people where you want, and it's not going to be that easy for Bruno Le Maire to exist because, of course, he won nearly 30%, but 30% is not pro-Bruno Le Maire people. Now he has to build something, and I'm not sure if he's going to work with Sarkozy. Maybe he's going to say that he's going to candidate for the primary very soon. So it's not going to be an easy thing for Bruno Le Maire too.
We woke up this morning to news that Sarkozy had suggested this sort of council of former prime ministers within the party. Two of them are his direct rivals for those primaries, and they both rejected the concept.
Which was to be anticipated, because it's a traditional Sarkozy trap. It's, I want to keep my enemy closer to me, as closest as possible, because I want to taint them as much as I can with what I'm doing as the leader of the UMP. So François Fillon,
they complained actually that they were being put out to pasture in this this sort of this committee of old wise men.
Yeah, it was suggested by Edouard Balladur, Nicolas Sarkozy's former mentor. Not the brightest political idea, if you ask me, because it's a way of disconnecting both Alain Juppé and François Fillon, saying, and speaking like Nicolas Sarkozy, he would have said, they're in my team, and you shouldn't count on them for the primary in 2016.
Now, left-leaning tabloid Libération plays on the old expression that Speedy Sarko was the hyper-president. On its front page this Monday, the newspaper branding Sarkozy the hypo-president. A subpar score, says the paper. He's got the party machine, but Alain Juppé has public opinion. Sarkozy's former prime minister Fillon has the platform, and his party leadership rival Bruno Le Maire the novelty factor. And, quote, the editorial concludes that Sarkozy will be more killer than unifier. Bruno Bernard, do you agree with that?
I do. And he's always been like that. I mean, he's always managed to create a strength rapport with his political nemesis, or he's always imposed himself on his political family. Nothing was ever given to him. I mean, he won the party, UMP party, in 2004 against Jacques Chirac's will, and now he's fighting to reclaim that, because he thinks that this crown, this UMP crown, and this French presidency.
So what you're saying is everything's going to be a show of strength. It's going to be a power play.
Yes.
How's that going to work? Are we going to see more infighting within the French right?
That's very likely. I mean, Françoise Fresso's the Le Monde editorialist said that the battle of the right has begun, and I think that's what we will see in the near future.
So how does that bode for 2017, the next presidential election? Will the party have unified by then?
No, I think it will unify behind the candidate that will come out of the primaries. That's why it's very important to have open primaries where everybody can stand and everyone can vote. If it's limited to UMP UMP voters, UMP members, it's not going to work. And you will see Alain Juppé, François Fillon, and others stand in the first round of the presidential election in 2017.
Because that's still up in the air at this point.
Yes, it is.
Raphael, at this point in time, will you say that the candidate that gets the nomination will be bruised and bloodied, or will he be strong?
Well, I think when we look at the polls, it's something really pretty clear came for the last 6 months. When 6 months ago, people in the polls, people say, well, we're going to have a second round with maybe the National Front. Now the poll shows that the second round will be the UMP and the National Front. So the victory is nearly promised to someone from the UMP. And that's why I think I totally agree with you. I think the battle is going to be really, really harsh for the coming years. And for Sarkozy, for the first time, it's going to be like a marathon with hurdles. He's going to have one hurdle is Bruno Le Maire, a second hurdle is going to be François Fillon, another one will be Alain Juppé, and then Marine Le Pen or François Hollande. So for him, it's something brand new.
And through it all, Sarkozy, there really is a love him or hate him feeling, isn't there, about him? He is one of these polarizing figures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Why is that?
When you look at the polls, I think there are two Sarkozy, and it's pretty clear now, and it's going to be this dilemma for him. Nicolas Sarkozy, as a politician, he has great potential, but Nicolas Sarkozy is also a public figure, and I think this is the major flaw for him. So.
But why is he such a polarizing figure? Why do people either really love him or really hate him?
Well, I think because from a political point of view and from a personal point of view, he always take part and try to be strong. He has this courage in politics, and I think, yeah, people do not know how to react to this, or sometimes they are truly supporters and sometimes they can't stand him, and it's absolutely the same when you look at from the right-wing supporters.
Bruno Bernard, will voters rally around Nicolas Sarkozy if he gets the nomination?
You mean in 2016? They can, of course. You have to remember that there's a lot of traumatized right-wing voters in France after what happened in 2012, and they will pick anyone who's facing François Hollande and Marine Le Pen in the 2017 elections. It's just going to be very difficult until then, because there is a strong anti-Sarkozy movement, mood, I would say, not movement, mood, within the right-wing electorate. So that's why the primary will be the key for Sarkozy and the rest of them.
All right, so in 2016, the momentum may switch when it comes to who has the wind in their sails for the right. For the time being, the wind is in the sails of the far right. The National Front scoring historic wins earlier this year, both in local elections and European elections. And on the same weekend, where the French UMP party was holding its vote for party leadership, Marine Le Pen in Lyon was holding the Congress of the National Front.
François Hollande's legacy is very bad indeed, as is Nicolas Sarkozy's, which makes sense because they have the same politics. It's the same sort of cause and effect. So what I want to say to you is that whichever one it is, it won't change much for us.
Is that true, Raphael Leclerc? What do studies show? Whether or not it's Alain Juppé or Nicolas Sarkozy or someone else, does it make a difference for the National Front?
I think for the National Front, it doesn't make a difference, because the National Front has always said, we are the true opposition party. We do not care if it's Alain Juppé, François Fillon, or Nicolas Sarkozy. We're going to win the election. And I don't see the Marine Le Pen try to change her strategy depending on the candidate. But I think from the other point of view, if you take Nicolas Sarkozy or Alain Juppé, it's going to be absolutely not the same strategy regarding the UMP, the National Front. I think Nicolas Sarkozy will try to, as he did for the last election in 2007, try to maybe go on this territory and try to bring back the people who vote for National Front. And I think Alain Juppé is more European. He's going to play something with the centre vote.
And the more you fish for those votes from the far right, the more you win them back, or the more you get people to actually vote far right?
This is the dilemma. In 2007, he managed to get them back, but at the moment, he knows that the Socialist Party are pretty low and they have pretty low chance to qualify for the second round. So I think he's going to try this again.
Bruno Bernard, on that score, what's the best rampart against the far right?
It's about actually doing what you're promising the voters you will do when you're campaigning. That's the only way to counter the National Front. But, you know, speaking about political tactic, the right only has to knock out the socialist candidate in order to face Marine Le Pen in the second round and force left-wing voters to vote for their candidate, for its candidate, in the second round. So it could be Nicolas Sarkozy facing Marine Le Pen, which would be a nightmare for left-wing voters. But I think they will rally around Nicolas Sarkozy as they did around Jacques Chirac in 2002.
Do the numbers suggest that people from the left, like in 2002, they
well,
voted
yeah.
overwhelmingly when there was this shock knockout of the socialists in the first round? The left-wing voters voted for the incumbent, Jacques Chirac, who was conservative.
I think it's not going to be, if you take the polls at what they say today, if we have a scenario with Sarkozy and Marine Le Pen, it's going to be pretty hard, and the outcome will be pretty harsh for democracy, I can say, in France. We can have a National Front with something like 42% when we look at the polls. And one can imagine the image of France, which is at the moment not very good, to have a National Front with 42% at the second round. It's not going to be the same thing if you have Alain Juppé. If you have Alain Juppé, you can have a majority of left-wing voters who support his candidacy. It's not going to be the same with Sarkozy, I think.
All right. Raphaël Leclerc, Bruno Bernard, you're both young guys, right? Relatively speaking.
Relatively, yeah.
15 years ago,
Yes.
1999, the heads of the lists for the European elections were called François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy. Why is it that people hang on for so long to the party leadership in this country?
In France. It's just the way that people like people they know. I mean, Jacques Chirac spent 40 years in French politics. François Mitterrand had to run 3 times for the presidency to actually get it.
But in Britain, for instance, you lose a general election, you
leave politics. You leave politics, whereas here you stick around, you stay.
Why is that?
Well, I guess it's just that you can always come back, and you're never dead in French politics. Whereas in the UK, for example, once you've left,
but is it the system? Is it like a caste system where it's impossible to kick you out?
It's difficult to kick you out. It's difficult to kick you out. People are very conservative when it comes to elected candidates. They tend to go for what they know. They don't really like change. They don't really like new faces, unfortunately.
Raphaël Leclerc, I'm not asking the pollster, I'm asking the citizen. How do you feel about that? That the guys lose and they stick around?
Well, let me remind you what I said before is when you have the party for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, you have the opportunity to shape it to your image. And one, for example, if we take François Hollande, when you are 10 years at the head of the #1 of the Socialist Party, you have time to put all your mans in regions.
Make a lot of friends.
Make a lot of friends. And after that, for years and years, you have support because you made the career of many people. So people are always...
But how come France and Britain are so different in that respect?
Well, I think we have a semi-presidential system in France, and we say Republican king in France, and I think it's absolutely true. When you are president, look at Nicolas Sarkozy. His campaign, this campaign was not amazing. He has several legal affairs to deal with, and he made 2/3 of the election and 2/3 of the vote. So this shows that he has a strong support, and yeah.
And you know, once a president in France, you're always called Monsieur le Président, whereas in Britain, you're never called Mr. Prime Minister once you've left the 10 Downing Street. So I think that's where it all happens. It's just that people...
A Regalian deference, you're saying?
Yes, that's what we are. I mean, we killed a king a long time ago, and, you know, we're still trying to find a new one. And I think it all links to the presidential system or semi-presidential system that we enjoy here in France.
And one final question on that. With the fact, you mentioned it, there's going to be, you hope, an open primary. Is French politics changing?
Because of the primaries. It is slightly changing, but to be fair, I mean, if we end up with either Nicolas Sarkozy, François Fillon, or Alain Juppé, it would not have changed a lot, to be honest.
All right, Bruno Bernard, I want to thank you for being honest with us.
Thank you.
I want to thank as well Raphaël Leclerc. Stay with us, gentlemen, because it's time for our Media Watch segment. Enter, if you will, the inimitable James Creedon. How are you, sir?
Well, thank you. Is Sarkozy inimitable? That is a question. Is he ready to share the stage with other people vying for the 2017 right-wing ticket?
I get the feeling you're about to give us an answer.
Well, I think he'd rather not have to share the stage, but he has to share the stage. As you can see in this article in Le Figaro, Nicolas Sarkozy showing himself on alongside Bruno Le Maire. So Bruno Le Maire, who got almost 30% of the vote for the UMP leadership. Nicolas Sarkozy getting less than 2/3 of the vote. So as Libération put it this morning, in siphoning off almost 30% of the vote, Bruno Le Maire shattered the myth of a party completely united around the return of the only possible leader, Nicolas Sarkozy. So it's a victory, but not the victory he would have hoped for, and it means that primaries with Alain Juppé and others are probably now going to happen because he is not the inevitable only figure of leadership on the political right. Moving on to another leader who is the inevitable leader of the far right this time, and he gave her a little, I suppose, poke, referring to that. He said, well, I didn't get 100% like Madame Le Pen, so there was a leadership, well, she was re-nominated as president of the Front National with, because being the only candidate, she got 100% of the votes, which led some, such as Guillaume Tessé on Twitter, who does these blends, these marvellous blends, François, to, I suppose, make a reference to North Korea and say, you know, is the National Front Party organised along North Korean sort of communist lines? Probably not, but, you know, there are some similarities. At least Nicolas Sarkozy remains supreme on Facebook. He has just passed the milestone of 1 million fans on Facebook, right? So, and one lucky Parisian was invited to spend a day alongside Nicolas Sarkozy at the UMP headquarters. That was the gift for the millionth person who liked him. But you see, I mean, that might be an indication for some that, you know, he's popular in some way, shape or form. But just a week ago, there was a big controversy about Tony Abbott, who is mystifyingly popular in New Delhi's Facebook community. Now, there are a couple of possible explanations for that, Francois. You can see here, this is 395,000 likes, and he's very, very popular with the 18 to 34-year-old age bracket in New Delhi. And some people saying it could be down to the selfies taken with the Prime Minister of India. This is actually a selfie that they took recently, and, you know, a lot of Indians on Facebook and Twitter sort of liked him as a result of that. It could be in a bid to counter the fact that there's a Facebook page with over 200,000 likes saying that he's the worst Prime Minister in Australian history. Or it could be buying likes, which of course is now an increasingly popular trick by politicians or even regular people who just want to look popular on Facebook. So some people asking that question, oh, that's unrelated, asking that question about Tony Abbott, whether or not those likes are fully authentic, Francois. So I suppose Nicolas Sarkozy, we can only trust him that they are fully authentic.
I sense a little bit of suspicion.
I don't know. I mean,
James, huh?
who knows?
You're putting it out there.
Who knows? Who knows? We'll finish with this. This is a screen grab from French rolling news channel Itélé. Nicolas Sarkozy on his way to the headquarters after the election. Now, as somebody pointed out there, I'm not sure how visible it is, but that is actually a bus lane. So he's barely back, and the first thing he does, is break the laws of the road. So consistency, #Sarko.
All right. James Creedon, many thanks. There's much more coming up in Media Watch. I want to thank our panel again, and thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.